Hey everybody, you got Marcel here. Welcome back to my channel. I had to give some thought to how I wanted to label this video. For today, I'm going to be asserting something that I don't believe I have ever heard in the history of all the MGTOW videos I've listened to. So how many times do you hear people saying, for example, MGTOW is not the opposite of feminism, it's a result of feminism? Or perhaps that the MGTOW philosophy comes from a toxic environment, like a hostile society. I'm guilty of that one myself. Far too often we feel like we're getting backed into a corner where we need to justify our own existence, our own choices and paths that we take. Here's the deal. Not only am I going to prove that MGTOW is not a symptom, at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to show that it is a form of evolution. It's an optional advancement of society. I say optional because there's a lot of people that won't choose this path. There's a lot of people that it's not a perfect fit for. Of course, I'm referring mostly to men, obviously. To be frank, I'm sick and tired of the idea of feminists getting credit for the creation of MGTOW, whether it be by influence, by effect, however you want to look at it. No, they don't get credit for our beliefs. This accumulation of knowledge, whatever you want to refer to it as. And it goes deeper than the concept of us existing in different forms since the history of time, ever since there's been a society to walk away from in the first place. So I was sitting back the other day and I had kind of a mind-blown moment. As many of you already know from previous videos, I breed rodents. I don't mean to fall back on them frequently for my examples, but I'm familiar with them. Hear me out for a moment, I do have an important point to make with it, so you follow what my thought process was. I was watching them while they were getting fed, and I noticed one of my prize breeders, a male. Don't laugh at me now for having a prize breeder rat. I mean, you gotta focus on genetics. This guy has been around for years, which is unusual for breeding rats. And frankly, he's huge. He's easily a third larger than any of the other rats I've had. I've weighed these breeder rats in at over 500 grams. That's more than a pound. But let's not get off topic here. They reach a certain point in their lives, you see, when they'll stop breeding. Specifically, the males do. The females just breed as long as they can. Their litters get smaller and smaller, but the males one day will just have a change in behavior. The younger ones will fight and bicker and, slap each other around and compete. I mean, sure, yeah, the older ones will still hook up with some of the girls if they come around, but in the end, they don't chase them anymore. Now, as you're listening there, you might be thinking I'm going to compare the behaviors of humans with rats and say, oh, look, it's natural. And that's not the direction I'm going with this, so humor me for a minute. Yeah, I do see that behavior occur naturally, so it does happen, but that's not the point of why I'm bringing it up. As I see some of them fighting, bickering over females and chasing them around all day, the older, more mature ones sitting back and chilling, just enjoying the free food and the rest of their lives, it's almost like they're retired. And considering that one guy's size, I mean, he could slap around any other male rat in that pen. He could have any of the females he wanted, and he just doesn't do it anymore. He's just chilling. So what am I getting at? You see all these behaviors, these actions that they go through, be it natural or otherwise, based on environment. But you see the younger ones doing all this stuff. I always wondered what would happen if I were able to reach in there and sort of gift them the knowledge of self-awareness. Now, to clarify what I mean, any animal, if I were able to reach in and make them self-aware, where they knew what was going on, they recognized that they were a rat, that they were in a cage, however they want to look at it, suddenly they had a choice to keep breeding, to keep fighting, mating, competing, all of that, or to do whatever else they wanted to. Snap your fingers and they got human-level consciousness. Not to go off the deep end here or anything, but what do you think that animal would do? Be it rat or otherwise, just any animal. Would it continue behaving in the same way that all of its kindred animals are? Would it follow its genetic programming and continue to fight and bicker and breed? Or would it be more interested in getting out of the cage? Perhaps a longer, more fruitful lifestyle. Crap, I don't know about you, but if I knew I had the lifespan of a rodent, I would probably be looking at going on cruises and doing all kinds of crazy stuff and experiencing as much life as I could. And messing around with a female rat would be the last thing on my mind. Perhaps your thought process is about the same as mine on this, I would not act like a rat anymore if I were the one given consciousness. But to be fair, maybe I'm projecting. Maybe I have the bias of the choices I've already made within my life. Still, considering the breeding, the fighting, all of the drama, it drastically shortens their lifespan. And the longer they sit back chillin', honestly, the longer they get to live. Maybe that's a personal choice we would all have to make in that situation, but it really had me reflecting. Self-awareness is very rare in the animal kingdom. There's only a number of creatures that are capable of it, and they have really unique and interesting ways of testing for it. I might have mentioned it before where they put a feather on the animal's head. I think it was a gorilla, and they show them a mirror. And if they see the feather on their head and reach up and grab it and throw it aside by looking in the mirror, then they recognize what they're looking at is themselves and not another gorilla, simply based on that they knew where to grab. But beyond just recognizing oneself, it almost begs the question, how many people are really self-aware? How many of you out there have wanted to go up to a friend or family member that was doing horrible things with themselves, making huge mistakes in their lives, and just wanting to reach out and stop them and say, no, see things from my perspective. Witness your own reality. Don't make those mistakes. You have so much more potential. Choose a better path. Now, I'm not trying to sound preachy here or anything. I'm talking about circumstances where someone's really destroying themselves. Stuff that they quite possibly might never recover from. Like if someone were horribly addicted to drugs, for example, would they still continue in that behavior if they could step out of that life for a moment and have that self-awareness to recognize what was going on? Could the same be said about a guy who finds himself in a toxic relationship, whether he be married or otherwise, but he's so overwhelmed with the situation that he can't really reflect on what is happening? So caught up in his biological imperative to breed and maintain that lifestyle, it becomes kind of a trap that he can't break free from. So here's one of the big assertions that I'm going to make through this video is that eventually all men go MGTOW, or at the very least have a serious red pill moment. Now, it's relative to the guy. I don't want to set a number on it, like their 50s or 60s, older years. I've seen countless examples of it. When I was talking to some guys at work, young guys, I practically want to call them kids, early 20s. One of them was talking, bragging about getting married, and I'm like, hey, that's awesome. So why'd you get married? And he was kind of floored by the question, as if nobody bothered to ask him why it would be a good idea. He looks at me and says, well, I was gonna stay with her anyway, so I figured it would make me a lot more money. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, right on. I walk around the other room where all these older guys, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are sitting. And I'm like, hey, everybody, this guy over here tells me he got married because it's gonna make him more money. All of them just kind of stared at each other for a minute and then at the same time busted out laughing. Now, obviously, the guy screwed up because, we all know here in our community that they're not going to make any more money by doing that. Well, he's not anyway. She might. The thing is, though, out of like 7 guys in that room, every last one of them knew that without having to have any mention from me. Everybody knew, and it was all the older guys that had been around the block a few times. See, men all go red pill. They all get the knowledge. It comes to them at some point in their lives. It's gonna happen. Maybe it's after something really bad happens. Maybe it's after time and experience. But eventually, everybody gets there. We all know. Here's the thing. Wouldn't it be awesome to not have to live through all of the misery to realize all of that? A lot of those older guys were already married. Like, they were tied down, trapped. There's nothing they could do, but they still recognized it. It kind of begs the question, if we could have the realization, for example, that we want to travel, we want to write a book, we want to experience something at some point in our lives that matters to us, is it better to figure that out when we're 50 or 60? Or when we're 20? Do you suppose those rats would like to realize that they're in a cage and that they could be chilling that whole time and not have to be chasing and getting the crap kicked out of them constantly? Do you think that they would want to be self-aware? Maybe not. Perhaps ignorance is bliss. I don't think blue pill guys are that blissful, but that's just me. So A couple of things in a sense of a summary. True self-awareness. Realizing that we're being driven by hormones and that our actions aren't in our best interest. That's something I think everyone would appreciate, at least at some level. They might be able to make better choices. And that, to me, is what going MGTOW is. It's a way to really understand ourselves, to make the choice for ourselves. It's the next stage of consciousness beyond that of just simple genetics, and that is why it's not the regression of society, but rather its advancement. And for those of you that have lasted this long through this video, you're awesome, by the way, I'm going to predict some of the arguments that people are going to throw back at me. The argument that feminism is the result of the same processes in society that MGTOW is, like the inverse of MGTOW. Well, first of all, our philosophy may be a movement away from what is natural for men, but it's not men trying to act like women. Feminism, if it's a behavior other than just them demanding more crap to be given to them, could be called a movement of women trying to act more like men. I'm sure we can find several examples of that. We're not trying to exhibit female behaviors or take on their privileges or advance beyond them somehow in society. We just want our own lives. We're walking away from all that drama. Of course, not to speak for any of you, feel free to disagree. The only reason why feminism is in such opposition to our ideology is that it directly affects their ability to maintain control and power. In the end, they're just going to need to stop griping about everything. Men and women are not inherently better or worse. Men are just tailored to have capabilities that are more useful in society right now. Men work and create society. Women foster the home and create life, the babies. That might sound like it's coming across as an insult to women, but it's not. I see it as a balanced system. If women simply wanted to walk away from the biological imperative to reproduce, there wouldn't actually be an issue with that. Feminists aren't simply saying, I just don't want kids. They are going in and trying to twist society out of shape. And I don't want to hear any of this side argument about not having enough babies. We need more babies. Quality matters. Kids that come from broken homes don't contribute to society in the same way that fully functional people do. I would know I came from a broken family. Who cares about numbers if they just wind up leeching off society anyway? All this fear about having enough babies is just guys getting manipulated thinking they have no other choice but to turn to women. Yes, population count does matter, but if the offspring are corrupted and broken, what do they really do for the society? I would take one intellectual, productive man over 100 of these kids pretending to be adults nowadays. Getting back on topic, I'm going to quote Howard Dare here for a minute. By the way, he's got an awesome channel. Go check him out. But he said, women are fully equipped to be women, and men are fully equipped to be men. It's how nature intended it. I really liked that comment. Men, and especially not MGTOW, are not trying to change the natural order of things, disrupt and possibly even corrupt what nature intended. We've just evolved beyond the point in our lives where we're willing to do absolutely anything to get between a girl's legs. At least, that's sort of the way I was thinking about it. I will end this topic with something of a thought. I suggest that we all look very carefully at our lives and recognize the behaviors we could be stopping today that we haven't realized yet. And more importantly, recognize the cages we may be living in, self-imposed or otherwise. I've decided that I want to be self-aware. I figure that there's a lot more to life. I realize that was something of a heavy video though. Let me know down below what you think. Was I onto something? Tell me if you agree, disagree. I want to know your thoughts. If you want more content, like, share, subscribe. I hope to see you again soon. This has been Marcel.